quickly around the NBA last night while other games were in progress. That, at 9:33 Eastern Time, was the shocked reaction of Mark Cuban after he was shown an email from the league office announcing the suspension of the regular season. Here is what Cuban and others had to say about it.
This is people's lives at stake. This isn't about basketball. This isn't about the Mavericks. This isn't about, when do we start or do we start or how do we start? This is a pandemic, a global pandemic where people's lives are at stake. And, I'm a lot more worried about and talking to her and telling her to stay in the house than I am about when we play our next game.
You think this is, it's not going to affect us. We're the NBA. One of our players has the coronavirus. And, who knows what that means for their team and the other teams that, have been with them. So you really get concerned for just what's going on, not just here in the NBA, but in the entire world. These are things that you watch in movies. You watch a movie about this stuff, and now we're living it and trying to, take it day by day and figure out how to move forward and get some clarity.
It shows you how, fragile it is. Here it is, a player that is in our league that, a lot of players have come in contact with. So that's a concern, and that's why it's prudent for Adam to suspend the season until we get a hold of it and get a grasp of it.
Here's some of the reaction on social media. Evan Fournier of the Magic was just on the phone with Rudy, meaning Gobert. He is doing good, man. Let's not panic, everyone. Love you all. LeBron James tweeted, man, we're canceling sporting events, school, office, work. What we really need to cancel is 2020. Damn, it's been a rough 3 months. God bless and stay safe. Steph Curry tweeted, 2020 ain't it. Don't know what to compare the situation to. Just got to buckle up and take care of yourself and those around you. Basketball will be back at some point. But right now, protect yourself and stay safe out there. Let's bring this to our table here to discuss. And we have a couple of former players here, Matt Barnes and Jay Will. And Jay, I'll start with you. When you saw this last night, and obviously this is something that we have been talking about in the lead up to it, what was your reaction?
First off, it's sad for us as a society that this needs to happen to Tom Hanks, Rita Wilson, or Rudy Gobert, an NBA player, for us to take this whole thing very seriously. It's been happening to a lot of people who haven't had big names, and it's been going on for a while. Secondly, this is unprecedented for the league, and I agree with you. Two things can both be true at once. They have made provisions. The NBA did make provisions, and they were allowed to have that kind of care for guys like Stephen Curry or to care for Rudy Gobert to get tested. But in the same breath, they also dragged their feet a little bit on this, guys. And I think we have to be realistic about this. The fact that they didn't have one uniform decision, so you're not allowing fans to be in the building, but still, the players, you don't know who they've been in contact with. You don't know who their family members will be in contact with or friends, but you allow them to play. So the fact that they had split decisions from different entities, from the Washington Wizards, from the Cleveland Cavs, as opposed to Golden State. If you're like, oh, Golden State is not playing, well, the mayor of the city of San Francisco deemed them not eligible to play. So I kind of think that's somewhat of a poor reflection on the league. I understand we still have a lot of room to go, but on Adam Silver, just to make a uniform decision from the beginning about this should have been nipped in the bud from the beginning, guys.
I think the fact that the only positives, to piggy off what Jay said about Rudy Gobert or Rita Wilson and Tom Hanks having it, is now that we're going to have people of some sort of stature, it'll be monitored. So we're going to be able to see how serious their symptoms are in the process they take to recover, or how, okay, well, if we handle it A, B, and C, you should be okay. So now, that, like I said, the fact that there are celebrities that have it, I think it'll be closely monitored, and we're going to be able to get a real scale of how serious this disease is.
Well, you had told us yesterday, Matt, that were it up to you as a player, you would prefer to suspend games entirely than to play them in empty arenas.
I just thought we just needed to take a step back and really find out more information about this. This is unprecedented territory. We're in uncharted waters right now, and this is something that's never been done. So as we've been reporting yesterday, China took a certain route. We needed to just take a step back. Sports is not the end-all, be-all. We need to take a step back and really figure out what we're dealing with.
And guys, can I say this just as an NBA player? At least you're incentivized. You can make millions of dollars. When I look at the NCAA tournament, all right, you're still working out name, image, and likeness state by state.
Let me just say, let me give a piece of advice to the NCAA.
Thank you, Brian.
And the Players' Championship and everybody else. Don't be late, be early.
Yes.
Shut it down. That is what absolutely has to happen. There is not negotiation. I don't even know what they're waiting for. Shut it down. The NBA was first here, and they're fortunate. And something else. The league owes a debt of gratitude to Mark Cuban, because that was a billionaire who was a team owner who was willing to come out in front of the cameras and be a voice of the league last night. And not only did he say that he needs to take care of the players and the family, He said they need to take care of the arena workers. That was a billionaire saying they need to take care of the arena workers. Mark Cuban, so while you're right, I do think the NBA was a little bit sluggish. And you know, Cuban, I assume, was on that call yesterday where they were the decisions, and the fact that he was still shocked says where their headspace was. But he is now moving forward.
I agree.
And we need to move forward with the rest of the sports too.
Yeah, so we're going to get to the NCAA momentarily, but China does have a blueprint for this, and they did suspend their basketball operations. Yeah. What can the U.S. and the NBA take from that?
I realize it's not apples to apples. China and the U.S. are very different, but I can say this. China shut down their basketball association, the CBA, in mid to late January. They've been down for 10 weeks. They are now calling their players back after 10 weeks and hoping to play in early April. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. That is our example. We will have basketball again. And the NBA has asked their teams to give their availability of their arenas through August 1st. We're going to have basketball. We can't focus on that right now, but we're going to have it.
Okay. You mentioned the NCAA tournament, which is obviously right around the corner. We're in the conference championship with you on this day, and we thank you for getting up with us on ESPN. And you see the group that we have here, and there'll be many more. And I'm very cognizant of the fact that for 21 years now, one way or another, you have been getting up with me. And I will promise you that we will bring you the very latest on the information going around the world of sports, as this is a very different day. It started at 9:30 Eastern last night. Actually, it started before that. Let me take you to the events where the season was suspended between the Jazz and the Thunder, this game being played in Oklahoma City, or scheduled to be played. That's Chris Paul and the Thunder. They were scheduled to start. Tip was scheduled for just after 8 o'clock Eastern time. At 8:10, seconds before the ball was to be thrown in the air, you saw Chris Paul asking the Jazz bench where Rudy Gobert was and if he was sick. Gobert was not at the arena after feeling ill. And then just 4 minutes later, this announcement was made.
Tonight has been postponed. You are all safe. And take your time in leaving the arena tonight and do so in an orderly fashion. Thank you for coming out tonight. We are all safe.
Despite the understandable frustration that you heard in the initial reaction from the fans did leave in an orderly fashion. There did not seem to be any issues there. And as they did, with the word that Rudy Gobert had tested positive for the coronavirus, the court was roped off, workers spraying down seats. The Thunder players were allowed to leave the arena about 2 hours later. It was 5 hours after 2:10 in the morning when the Utah players finally left the arena. At 9:30 Eastern last night, the NBA released a statement. Quote, the NBA announced that a player on the Utah Jazz has preliminarily tested positive for COVID-19. The test result was reported shortly prior to the tip-off of tonight's game between the Jazz and the Oklahoma City Thunder at Chesapeake Energy Arena. At that time, tonight's game was canceled. The affected player was not in the arena. The NBA is suspending gameplay following the conclusion of tonight's schedule of games until further notice. The NBA will use this hiatus to determine next steps for moving forward in regard to the coronavirus pandemic. And we'll begin our coverage with Adrian Wojnarowski and Brian Windhorst, who are here, our NBA insiders. And Woj, I will start with you. How did the league arrive at this decision last night?
Well, you know, once Rudy Gobert had tested positive, and you knew at the very least you had a team in the Utah Jazz now that was going to have to be in self-containment. You can't play a schedule. And they knew that there were going to be players and other teams who had competed against him who had to be tested. And just hours before, Greeny, Adam Silver had been on a conference call with the Board of Governors, essentially his owners. And they had largely come to a consensus that the way they would proceed would be to continue playing games, but do so without fans. And that's what I was told Adam Silver was likely going to announce today. But that all changed with Rudy Gobert's positive test. Almost immediately, Adam Silver made the decision to suspend play. And that's where the league is, as of this morning, on hiatus.
And Wendy, you had told us yesterday here that this was the reason for removing the fans from the arena. This was the reason for keeping the media out of the locker room, because they knew that once any player did test positive, that this would be the result.
Yeah, and I think the league was in a little bit of denial here. We saw statements out of Cleveland where they said, no, we have great air exchangers and we can purify the air. Yesterday, we saw the D.C. mayor call for no major gatherings, and the Wizards put out a statement saying, no, we're going to still do it. But I will say the NBA was ahead on something. They had advised their teams within the last week to set up procedures to get coronavirus testing. We saw Steph Curry get the flu last week. He got a coronavirus test and was cleared on Saturday. And because those provisions were in place, when Gobert tested negative for influenza A, they were able to get him a coronavirus test, and they were able to get the result back fast enough to stop the game. And now, one of the things that's going to happen in the league today, you mentioned the teams that the Jazz played, but the teams that the Jazz played that played other teams, the officials, the entire league last night was shaken. But because they were able to have those procedures in place, we now have done what we needed to do, which is to stop playing. And that is a good thing. I know it feels bad. And